History remembers the battles, the victories, the liberation, but there are chapters of World War II that historians whisper about, chapters that never made it into your textbooks. What you are about to discover will change how you see the entire war. We celebrate the heroes, we condemn the villains, but what about the moments that defy simple morality, the experiments, the betrayals, the decisions that sacrifice thousands to save millions? Hidden, forbidden truth. These are not conspiracy theories. These are documented facts, declassified files, and testimonies buried for decades. By the end of this video, you will understand why some truths were meant to stay forgotten. Let's begin. Unit 731. In the frozen wilderness of Manchuria, Japan operated a facility that would make Nazi concentration camps look organized by comparison. Unit 731. Led by General Shiro Ishii, this biological warfare research unit conducted experiments so horrific that even hardened war tribunals struggled to document them. Prisoners, referred to only as logs, were subjected to vivisection without anesthesia. Living humans were dissected while conscious to study organ function. Limbs were frozen and thawed repeatedly to study frostbite. Prisoners were infected with plague, cholera, and anthrax, then cut open to observe the disease progression. Between 3,000 and 12,000 people died in these experiments, mostly Chinese civilians, but also Koreans, Russians, and Allied prisoners of war. But here is where the story turns darker. After the war, the United States granted immunity to all Unit 731 researchers. In exchange for what? Their research data. The value of the research outweighed the moral implications. General Ishii was never tried for war crimes. He lived freely in Japan until 1959. The victims received no justice. And the data? It was used to advance American biological weapons research during the Cold War. But Unit 731 was just the beginning of secrets buried in darkness. Operation KEELHAUL. When the war ended, 2 million Soviet citizens found themselves in Western Europe, prisoners of war, forced laborers, refugees who had fled Stalin's regime. They begged the Allies for asylum. They knew what awaited them back home. Stalin considered any Soviet soldier who surrendered to be a traitor. The penalty was death or the Gulag. Betrayal. The Western Allies knew this. They had intelligence reports detailing Stalin's purges. Yet at the Yalta Conference, Churchill and Roosevelt agreed to Operation KEELHAUL, forced repatriation. Every single Soviet citizen would be returned, willing or not. British and American soldiers were ordered to load refugees onto trains at gunpoint. Men slit their own throats rather than board. Mothers threw their children from windows before jumping themselves. Entire families chose suicide over the trains to Moscow. Those who returned faced exactly what they feared: mass executions, 25-year sentences in Siberian labor camps. Of the 2 million repatriated, historians estimate that fewer than half survived the first year. If this revelation from the post-war era is opening your eyes, hit like and subscribe for more forgotten history that shaped our world, because what comes next will shake you even more. The Allies called it diplomacy. The survivors called it murder by bureaucracy. The Hunger Plan. We speak of the Holocaust as Hitler's greatest crime, but running parallel to it was another genocide, equally systematic, almost entirely forgotten: the Hunger Plan. In May 1941, Nazi strategists gathered to solve a problem. Germany needed food to sustain its war machine. The solution was mathematically simple and morally catastrophic. 30 million deaths. That was the target number. 30 million Slavic people would be deliberately starved to death to feed German soldiers and civilians. As Herbert Bakke, the architect of the plan, wrote, the removal of surplus population from the food supply was an absolute necessity. They were not hiding their intentions. This was policy. Many tens of millions of people in this territory will become superfluous and will die or must emigrate to Siberia. The siege of Leningrad was not just military strategy. It was the Hunger Plan in action. For 872 days, 3 million civilians were trapped with almost no food. People ate wallpaper paste, boiled leather, and eventually each other. 1 million died. Yet Leningrad was just one city. Across occupied Soviet territory, villages were stripped of all grain. Farmers who hid food were shot. The total death toll from deliberate Nazi starvation policies, between 4 and 7 million civilians. But even as millions starved, another horror was unfolding in plain sight. Comfort women. The Japanese military called them comfort stations. The women inside called them prisons. Between 1932 and 1945, the Imperial Japanese Army systematically kidnapped, coerced, and trafficked an estimated 200,000 women into sexual slavery. They came from Korea, China, the Philippines, Indonesia, and occupied territories throughout Asia. Some were as young as 13, forced to serve up to 40 soldiers per day. The official military documents frame it as maintaining troop morale. The survivors describe torture, starvation, and beatings. Many were murdered when they became too sick to serve. Others were killed when the Japanese retreated to eliminate witnesses. We were not treated as human beings. We were military supplies. After the war, the crime was buried. Japan denied it for decades. The surviving women, now elderly, were dismissed as prostitutes or liars. It was not until 1991 that the first survivor came forward publicly. Kim Hak-sun broke 50 years of silence. She died in 1997, still waiting for an official apology. Silence, shame, justice denied. The Japanese government has since acknowledged the system existed, but many survivors maintain the apologies have been insufficient, and the women are dying. Fewer than 20 registered survivors remain alive today, but sexual violence was not the only atrocity hiding in the Pacific Theater. Allied bombing. Truth. We remember the Blitz, German bombs raining on London. But do we remember what came after? When the Allies gained air superiority, they did not merely return fire. They unleashed a campaign of destruction that still haunts ethical debates today. Firestorm, February 1945. Dresden, a city of refugees, hospitals, and architectural treasures. Over 2 nights, British and American bombers dropped nearly 4,000 tons of explosives and incendiaries. The goal was not military, it was terror. Air Marshal Arthur Harris, known as Bomber Harris, had a philosophy. The aim of the combined bomber offensive should be unambiguously stated as the destruction of German cities. The firestorm in Dresden reached temperatures of 500 degrees Celsius. People burst into flames simply from the radiant heat. The death toll remains disputed. Estimates range from 25,000 to 135,000, but Dresden was not unique. Hamburg, Cologne, Berlin. By the war's end, 5 million German civilians had died from Allied bombing. And then there was Japan. Tokyo, March 1945. A single night of firebombing killed more people than the atomic bomb at Nagasaki. 100,000 dead. 16 square miles of the city burned to ash. Were these attacks war crimes or necessary measures to end the war? The debate continues. But one thing is certain, the victors write history, and they rarely include chapters like this. Nazi gold secrets. As the Nazi regime crumbled, a question emerged that has never been fully answered. Where did the gold go? The Nazis looted approximately 580 metric tons of gold during the war, from central banks, from museums, from the teeth of concentration camp victims. Much of this gold vanished and has never been recovered. Switzerland, the neutral nation, accepted Nazi gold throughout the war. They knew where it came from. Documents show Swiss banks melted down gold bars stamped with concentration camp origins and recast them with Swiss markings. After the war, an estimated 280 tons of looted gold passed through Swiss vaults. Blood gold hidden. But Switzerland was not alone. Argentine banks, the Vatican, even American corporations did business with Nazi Germany until the final days. Standard Oil provided fuel additives. Ford produced military trucks. IBM supplied the punch card systems that organized the Holocaust. Profit flowed in both directions across the battle lines. After the war, Operation Safe Haven attempted to recover looted assets. They found only a fraction. Billions of dollars in stolen wealth disappeared into shell companies, secret accounts, and diplomatic immunity. In 1998, Swiss banks finally settled with Holocaust survivors for $25 billion, but the full accounting, it will never be known. The gold was just one secret. The scientists who created it were another. Operation Paperclip. Wernher von Braun is celebrated as the father of American space exploration. His Saturn V rocket carried men to the moon. But before NASA, von Braun built something else. The V-2 rocket, the weapon that terrorized London, and the factory where it was built tells a darker story. The rocket worked perfectly, except for landing on the wrong planet. The V-2 was assembled in the Middlewerk underground factory by concentration camp prisoners from Dora. Conditions were so brutal that more people died building the V-2 than were killed by it. 20,000 slave laborers worked to death, beaten and hanged for minor infractions. Von Braun visited the factory. He saw the conditions. He did nothing. Complicit. Yet after the war, Operation Paperclip brought over 600 Nazi scientists to America. War criminals were given new identities. Their Nazi Party memberships were erased. Their roles in the Holocaust were buried. Von Braun became a celebrity. He appeared on Disney television programs, charming American families with visions of space travel. Rocket's blood glory. He never faced trial. He never apologized. He died in 1977, an American hero. The 20,000 dead at Dora. Their names fill no memorials. The race to space was won on their bones. But the Nazis were not the only ones conducting experiments that defied humanity. The mustard disaster, December 2, 1943. Bari, Italy. The harbor was packed with Allied supply ships. German bombers struck without warning. In 17 minutes, they sank 17 ships. But one ship carried a secret cargo that would turn the raid into something far worse. The SS John Harvey was loaded with mustard gas bombs. The Allies had stockpiled chemical weapons in case Germany used them first. Now 2,000 bombs of mustard agent spilled into the harbor. Mixed with oil fires and smoke, the poison spread across the city. Sailors pulled from the water were covered in the substance. Doctors, unaware of the chemical exposure, wrapped them in blankets. The warmth accelerated absorption. Hundreds of men died from a weapon their own side had brought. The official death toll was 83. The real number was likely over 1,000. For decades, the disaster was classified. Winston Churchill personally ordered a cover-up, fearing it would reveal Allied chemical weapon stockpiles. Medical records were falsified. Death certificates listed burns rather than chemical exposure. The truth emerged only in 1967. But from this tragedy came an unexpected discovery. A doctor studying the victims noticed the mustard gas destroyed white blood cells. This observation led directly to the development of chemotherapy, life from death, medicine from warfare. But the cover-ups did not end in Italy. Rape of Berlin. When the Red Army reached Berlin in April 1945, they brought 4 years of rage with them. Soviet soldiers had witnessed their families murdered, their villages burned, their comrades tortured. Now they stood in the enemy capital, and they took revenge. Vengeance. What followed was one of the largest mass sexual assaults in recorded history. Historians estimate that between 100,000 and 2 million German women were raped by Soviet soldiers in the final months of the war. Girls as young as 8. Women as old as 80. Every woman from 8 to 80 was fair game. Soviet commanders knew. Some tried to stop it. Most did not. Stalin himself dismissed reports with a shrug, saying his soldiers had earned some fun. Silence, horror forgotten. For decades, this atrocity was erased from both Soviet and German history. The Soviets celebrated the liberation of Berlin. The Germans could not speak of their suffering without being accused of minimizing Nazi crimes. The women themselves carried their trauma in silence. Only after the Cold War ended did historians begin documenting the scale of the assault. An estimated 240,000 women died from the attacks or subsequent suicide. This was not war. This was systematic brutality that the victors chose to forget. But there remains one final darkness that shaped the entire post-war world. Atomic decision. August 6, 1945. A single bomb fell on Hiroshima. In one flash, 80,000 people ceased to exist. By the end of the year, 140,000 were dead. 3 days later, Nagasaki. Another 70,000 instantly killed. We are taught this was necessary, that it saved millions of lives by ending the war without invasion. But the historical record tells a different story. By August 1945, Japan was already defeated. Their navy was destroyed. Their cities were burning. American intelligence had intercepted messages showing Japan was seeking surrender through Soviet intermediaries. Japan was already defeated, and the dropping of the bomb was completely unnecessary. Admiral William Leahy, Truman's chief of staff, called the bomb barbaric and unnecessary. General Douglas MacArthur was not consulted before the decision. 7 of America's 8 five-star officers said the bomb was militarily unnecessary. So why was it dropped? Power politics. Cold War. The Soviet Union was about to enter the Pacific War. America wanted Japan's surrender before Stalin could claim influence in Asia. The bomb was not just about ending World War II. It was about starting the Cold War. 210,000 civilians died to send a message to Moscow. The atomic age began not with military necessity, but with political calculation. And we have lived in its shadow ever since. You have now seen what the textbooks leave out. The experiments that turned humans into test subjects. The betrayals that sent millions to their deaths. The bombings that burned cities full of civilians. The cover-ups that persist to this day. Truth hidden remembered. World War II was not a simple story of good versus evil. It was a war where everyone committed acts that haunt us still. The Allies. The Axis. The nations that stayed neutral while profiting from blood. The first casualty of war is truth. We honor the veterans who fought against tyranny. We remember the 6 million Jews and millions more murdered in the Holocaust. But we must also remember the other victims. The comfort women still waiting for justice. The refugees thrown back to Stalin's executioners. The cities incinerated to send political messages. History demands that we remember not just who won, but what was lost. If you made it this far, comment dark history to prove you are among those who seek truth over comfort. The truth is never comfortable, but it is always worth knowing. History has more to teach us. Subscribe if you want to learn. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant.